Okay, we are back on the record after our lunch break. I hope everybody had a good lunch. We have our jurors, counsel parties here, and I believe we're ready for another witness by the state. Mr. Ringel, are you prepared to call your next witness?
The state is prepared, Judge. The state would call DCI agent Holly Witt.
Good afternoon, Ms. Witt. There's a chair over here to my far left. You can come on up and have a seat. And you can move that microphone around however you'd like. So, Ms. Witt, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to swear you in. If you please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in these proceedings will be the truth?
I do.
Okay. And for the record then, can you please provide us with your first name and your last name and spell them both, please?
It's Holly, Holly, Witt, Witt.
Right, thank you. Mr. Ringel.
Agent Witt, how are you employed?
I have been with the Iowa Department of Public Safety as a state police officer. This is my 30th year.
Could you briefly outline your education and training?
Yes, sir. In 1995, I graduated from Simpson College with a Bachelor of Arts degree in criminal justice. Immediately after that, I went to the 22nd Iowa Department of Public Safety Academy. So this is an academy with Division of Criminal Investigation, which is the division that I'm in now, state troopers, narcotics agents, and fire marshals. It's an approximately 22-week academy. I graduated from the State Police Academy, which is held at Camp Dodge in Johnston, Iowa, and I've been continually serving as a state police officer since that time.
You said you've been with DCI for some time. What are your duties or your roles with DCI?
So my current assignment is with the Major Crimes Unit. My office is in Dubuque, Iowa, and then, so I do, DCI is an invited agency. We assist county and local, sometimes federal law enforcement with investigations, but we have to be invited in. I came back to the Major Crimes Unit about 4.5 years ago, and during that time a position was opened that was application process, so I competed against other candidates to be the technology agent for the major crime zone. So my primary focus is to make technology more accessible and understandable to law enforcement and juries in the context of criminal investigations.
And how do you go about doing that?
So I do a lot of search warrants for cell phone records. I'm also a mobile forensic examiner. I have training in software. So today you're going to see visual depictions of business records from companies such as US Cellular and Snapchat. I just try to make technology understandable in the context of a criminal investigation.
Do you have any certifications outside of the training that you just discussed?
I'm certified to operate a number of mapping softwares. They're just a visual depiction of business records. I'm also a cell phone forensic examiner, and then there's continual ongoing training, like, for example, law enforcement in Google. They have law enforcement summits every year that talk about the newest technologies that the companies such as Snapchat, Facebook, Google are rolling out. So it's continual ongoing technology. Technology is always changing and evolving.
Were you assigned to assist with the investigation into the death of Ryan Cooper?
Yes.
Do you recall when you were assigned to assist?
Yes, I was contacted by case agent Ryan Herman on June 18th, 2021 via the telephone, and one of my primary responsibilities is doing what we call a tech triage, talking about potential options with technology available in the case, things that I would want them to do to preserve a cellular phone correctly, and just asking about general contact numbers and reminding the agents to ask about anyone under 20 can say, I called someone, and that can mean I actually texted them. That doesn't necessarily mean they use the native app on their phone. Like sometimes they use Snapchat or Facebook, and that can mean I talked to them. So just reminding them to also get like a broad collection of how people communicate with one another that are persons of interest in the investigation.
So you're serving in somewhat of an advisory role and providing agents with information to aid them in their investigation, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you specifically, what was your role or what did you do besides that advisement role?
So primarily I focused on a number of records that are actually from the companies. So I'm not talking about physical devices today. I'm talking about a visual depiction of the records from Snapchat and US Cellular, and we have a little bit of Google records in this case that we'll talk about.
So when you were assigned to this case, what information did you have?
The case agent typically gives me a brief rundown of the details as they know them once they've arrived upon scene and had a chance to talk to and work with local law enforcement. I knew that Mr. Ryan Cooper was killed in his residence. I knew that there were Mrs. Cooper was present in the residence that day. I asked them to collect phone numbers for Mr. Cooper, Mrs. Cooper, and I knew that they were both business owners or did things in the public, so there was a high likelihood that they utilized things such as social media. So I asked for them to find Snapchat profiles, Facebook profiles, gather their cell phone numbers. I did a bunch of preservation immediately of that stuff, and then I immediately began working on search warrants. So all the information I will testify to today was obtained by serving a search warrant to either the cellular provider or the social media company.
You mentioned a preservation request. What is that?
A preservation request is a request to a social media or cell phone company, and it just preserves any information that that company has on their server that are business records relating to, for example, if it's a particular phone number or account, it's a snapshot in time on that. They actually don't disclose it to us until we go through proper legal process and we get a search warrant.
So you described some of the basic information that you had as you started your work on this case. You talked about some potential sources of information and the fact that you utilized a preservation request. With the information that you had received, how did that inform the decisions you were making on this case or the requests that you were making?
So we use the information that we receive from social media companies and cell phones to help guide the investigators in the investigative process, because oftentimes this information will reveal routes of travel, patterns of life, who someone is communicating with, whether it's on Snapchat or whether it's on phone calls or text messages. So I analyze the information received from cell phone records, social media companies, and then we use that in the investigative process to determine who killed Ryan Cooper.
And so you mentioned location data related to a device or a cell phone, correct?
Yes, sir.
But you also mentioned location data associated with applications, and you mentioned Snapchat and other similar applications. Could you explain the difference between the two?
Right. So the location data from a search warrant, in this example we're going to use Snapchat, that we get back from them is provided by the company Snapchat. So it's independent corroboration of any location information that that iPhone would necessarily have on the actual device. So the company sends back information, and Snapchat, because that user has enabled certain location attributes on the phone. So Snapchat, you can go in and you can say, I want to share my location. I don't want to share my location. There are certain times when you use Snapchat, if you're looking at an advertisement or whatever, Snapchat has, when you sign up for that app, Snapchat's probably going to use your location because it wants to send you ads that are targeted to where you are at in your geographic location. It wouldn't do me any good as an advertiser to see, to send someone in Iowa ads that were located in California, for example. So when you provide basic information to Snapchat, such as your address, your phone number with your zip code, your area code, Snapchat and all the applications that are social media applications then can target content to you based on those geographic identifiers.
So if someone's using Snapchat, they've enabled those features, that location information is available to Snapchat. That then becomes available to you because that's in their records?
Yes.
So if you apply for a search warrant, you can obtain that location information?
Yes.
With the information that you had and the potential sources of additional information, what were the first steps that you then took in your investigation?
So obviously we take time and we have to have probable cause to do a search warrant to obtain this stuff. So we have to show that communications in this case, such as on a cell phone or U.S. cellular records, Snapchat records, Google records, are relevant to the investigation that we're conducting so that it's reasonable that phones or applications were used in the planning of the crime. They would have location information. Sometimes this information can alibi someone as much as it can and put someone's device near a crime or give location information that's relevant in the investigation. So oftentimes it will clear someone out because their device is nowhere near that. We also look for things like pattern of life. When does a device wake up in the morning? Where does the device routinely go during the week? Like, I go to work every day, so if you were to look at my device information, you would see that my device goes to my office in Dubuque Monday through Friday, most days. And then if you were to look at my communication, you would see I'm primarily communicating during business hours with coworkers that also do my job. So it shows patterns of life. It shows deviations from patterns of life. It shows where a device normally goes. And just to be clear, everything that I'm talking about today is for a device, not a person. I have to say the device went here, the device went there. But there are times that I can say there was a user-manipulated event. For example, an outgoing phone call or a sent Snapchat. That's an event that has to take place, that a user has to physically manipulate the device to do those things.
I just want to make sure that it's clear what you're talking about because you were referencing a device versus a person. And I think there may be a misconception that if you see a device moving, that also indicates that that person is moving. Can you just explain a little more clearly what the difference is when you talk about a device versus a person and when you can state that someone is manipulating a device versus when a device may just be, again, separate from the person?
Yes, sir. So let's do the easy one first. So even in U.S. cellular records, something such as an outgoing phone call would be a device manipulation. That means someone actually has to physically be with that device to make that outgoing phone call. There are things in records that aren't dependent on a user using a device. So such as location where a phone is at or where a Snapchat location would give you. That isn't dependent on a person necessarily doing something on Snapchat. Sometimes those are things that are running in the background. So there's something on phones called U.S. cellular records called timing data. And that's like if you've ever seen the Sprint commercials where it says, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?" That's network engineers testing the efficiency of the network because they don't want things like dropped calls or areas where there's no cell phone coverage. That runs in the background of U.S. cellular all the time. So the cellular network is constantly checking in with the cell phone to make sure that there's good coverage in the area that you're in. Because if it wasn't, you would switch to a different carrier.
And so that's essentially all cell phones, right?
Yes, sir.
And when you say the network is checking in, what does that look like?
So the cellular network is just a fancy term for the infrastructure that exists, so you and I can use our cell phones to make wireless phone calls. Timing data is the part that they test the efficiency of their network, making sure there's no dead spots. And that runs, the system engineers are constantly using timing data, and that's recorded in their normal business records on an ongoing basis. But because it has a location base, we have to get that with a search warrant.
So if we're talking about some of this timing data, it's essentially, if I understand, the network checking in or pinging off a device.
So timing is a measurement because radio waves travel at the speed of light. So it's just a measurement that's reproducible. We can reproduce it from the business records, from the cell phone to the network and back to the cell phone. So that it's a known distance and it's recorded in the business records, and we can reproduce that timing data measurement visually so you can see, now this is still an estimate, but the phone is at or near that location, recorded in the U.S. Cellular business records that are certified as true, accurate, and correct. And companies keep these through normal course of business. They need them for billing. They need them to make sure their network is running efficiently. So these are records that companies keep in the normal course of their business.
And so knowing that, and you had talked a little bit about looking for some U.S. Cellular records, did you in fact apply for a search warrant and obtain records from U.S. Cellular?
Yes, search warrants. I didn't do every single search warrant in this case. Search warrants were applied for by law enforcement and the records were obtained, and then I examined the records.
When you obtain those records, are those for specific phone numbers or how are they delineated?
They are. So when you apply for a search warrant for a cell phone company, you have to provide them the cell phone numbers that you're looking for.
Judge, may I approach this witness?
You may. You don't need to ask again with this witness. Thank you.
I'm showing you a warrant and the state's exhibit number 315. Take a look at that. Ask you to recognize what that is.
Yes.
What is that?
This is a certificate of authenticity for business records from U.S. Cellular.
And is that in response to the search warrant that you just referenced?
Yes, it is.
And what are the target numbers associated with that records request? You don't need to read the phone numbers, I suppose, but if you could just indicate whose phone numbers those were to your knowledge.
Sure. It's Houston Danker's phone number, Karina Cooper's phone number, Ryan Cooper's phone number, and Aaron Cooper's phone number. And the date range of these records is June 1st, 2021 through June 18th of 2021. So 18 days in June.
And Your Honor, at this point, the state would move to admit State's Exhibit number 315, as well as State's Exhibit number 316, which is the location data received and certified by those by the certification in 315, and that's by stipulation of the parties.
Ms. Watt, just to confirm, okay, then State's Exhibits 315 and 316 are now admitted.
All right, had you prepared a demonstrative exhibit associated with your testimony here today?
Yes, sir.
Would it aid in your testimony to use that demonstrative exhibit?
Yes, sir.
With the court's permission, I'd ask to publish that demonstrative exhibit.
Any objection, Ms. Watt?
No, Your Honor.
Hold on, I think I need to reset the projector, so just give me a second.
Agent Witt, is this the demonstrative exhibit that you prepared?
Yes, sir.
And I'll let you know as well that there is a laser pointer up there in front of you. If you want to use that, I believe it'll show up if we lower the lights just a little bit, if you need to use it. So what is this first page of your demonstrative exhibit? What does that show us?
So this is just going to cover for you visually the records that we looked for. So the U.S. Cellular records that we obtained from search warrant, and then there's our date range of June 1st through June 18th, 2021, are for Aaron Cooper. I'm just going to refer to it by the last 4 digits of their number there. And then you'll also notice that we assigned, so Aaron Cooper's number, the last 4 digits of his cell phone number are 0636. And then if you look, Aaron Cooper is assigned orange. So anything that's mapped for Aaron Cooper will be orange throughout the entire presentation. Houston Danker's cell phone number is the next one. The last 4 digits of his cell phone number right here are 1616. And then anything mapped for Houston Danker in this presentation will appear red, and it will appear consistently red through the entire presentation. Ryan Cooper's cell phone number is 3536, the last 4 digits, and Ryan Cooper's U.S. Cellular cell phone records will be green, and Karina Cooper's cell phone number 6135 are her last 4 digits. And anything mapped for Karina Cooper will be blue.
All right, and that's for the U.S. Cellular records that you obtained?
Yes, sir.
And now I think the next heading is Snapchat. What information did you obtain from Snapchat?
So we obtained information from 2 accounts from Snapchat. The first one, the HDank1, for the date range of March 1st, 2020 through July 1st, 2021, is Houston Danker's Snapchat information, and we will keep that red. So if you see locational information from Houston Danker, that will be consistent with the color for his cell phone mapping as well. And then the second Snapchat account obtained for the same date range is Karina Cooper's, and her Snapchat username is right here, Karina Coop, and that will remain kind of the blue turquoise color consistently throughout the records.
And then at the bottom of this slide, it indicates that you had prepared a search warrant for Google. What information were you seeking from Google?
Right, so we did a search warrant to Google. Google has a wide variety of information. Obviously, this is the Gmail address here, karinacooper50@gmail.com. Google also sometimes has locational information. It has information about apps that you use through the Google browser. So if you download Snapchat, Google records that. If you change your password on something, Google records that. It can have locational information. And also there's all search history that can be there. And when we do a search warrant to Google, it depends. It's user controlled, so people that have a Google account can set their privacy settings however they want. So sometimes we see their entire search history and location information, sometimes we don't. It just depends on how they have their privacy settings set.
And the range for the U.S. Cellular records was June 1st through June 18th of 2021. Is it your understanding that Ryan was killed on June 18th of 2021?
Yes, sir.
Moving on to the next slide, what are we seeing here?
So this is just to give you an example of some cell sites. So if we look here in the middle, this is like a typical cell phone tower is how I would describe this, with the 3-sided array. Here's one side, here's the second side, here's the third side. But I want you to steer away from using the term cell tower, because this is also a cell site. It has cellular communication on it. We see a lot of antenna arrays for cellular carriers in Iowa on water towers. This is in Mason City. There's cell phone towers on a building. So this is just to kind of generally explain to you that cell towers communicate through RF frequency radio waves with cell phones. And then cell towers are kind of the middleman in the cellular network. They also help facilitate communication to the rest of the cellular network so our mobile phones can talk to each other. So this is just to kind of orientate you to cell phone towers. When you see cell phone towers mapped here, I'll point it out on the map to you, but these cell phone towers are mapped by their latitude and longitude. So we don't map by the business address in the cell phone records because that can be like a mailing address. So we always map by the physical latitude and longitude of the actual cell site. And the latitude and longitude is provided in the U.S. Cellular business records.
So in the business records, these cell sites, towers, or whether the communication devices are on flagpoles, et cetera, that information appears by latitude and longitude in the records.
It does.
All right, what are we seeing here?
So this is just to orientate you what mapping looks like. It's going to be pretty simple. So in this case, where the triangle meets here, that's the geographic location of the cell site or cell tower in this case that we're using. This arc and shaded area here is just to tell you what sector. Do you remember the last slide where we saw the 3 sectors? This is just to tell you what sector it's using, and this is just to cue your eye. So this is a cell phone call. If I was mapping this cell phone call, this is just an example for us, I would just say that on this date and this time, this cell phone was using this cell site and it's somewhere in this sector. But I cannot be any more specific on that with just a simple cell phone call. So if you think of a flashlight analogy, and I am standing at the point and I'm shining the flashlight, anywhere that beam goes, kind of in this sector, is where that cell phone can be.
All right, and so you said that's as specific as you can be with that information. What's per call measurement data?
So per call measurement data is our timing data that we talked about earlier. And this data is awesome. So here's our cell site, and this is just showing this is the cell sector. But with this timing data, I can actually be very specific. I can say that during this date and this time, this phone was at or near this arc at this time. So it's much more specific. So we can place phones much more specifically with that. And as you will see in next slides, there's thousands of these data points. So if 2 data points cross, if we have arcs that would cross one another, it's kind of like Pirate's Treasure. It's X marks the spot. The phone is, that's the first place that I would use to look at the phone. And I've been looking at mapping records for 18 years now. We've used them to find deceased people, missing children, silver alerts, things as small as a set of keys, driver's licenses. So we always look for independent corroboration of our data. We don't just ever use one set of data. We use the extractions from the cell phone. We use cell phone records. But these records are very, very accurate, and they help us determine where a cell phone was at a particular date and time.
So these records you stated are very, very accurate to the point that you can find sometimes fairly small items.
Yes, sir.
And is a further degree of accuracy obtained then by cross-referencing this information with other location information such as that you referenced from Snapchat?
Right. So as a tech agent, it's really important to also get a wide variety of sources. It's like putting a puzzle together, and we don't take all of our puzzle pieces from one source. We want to see a complete picture. So we always look for additional sources of information that corroborate location information from one set of records. So we're constantly evaluating that against cell phone extractions, data from other sources that may have locational information.
Is this only valuable for devices that are fixed, or does it cover movement as well?
It covers movement as well.
And is that what we're seeing here in this next slide?
Right, so this is not an actual slide from our presentation. This is for illustrative purposes here. But sometimes, as you can see, we have Monarch Highway 80 here. And then you can see that the device is moving. So the device is here at 10:28 p.m. It's here at 10:47 p.m. And then the device is here at 10:21 p.m. So in this particular example, I told investigators you need to look for a device moving in a vehicle because I certainly can't travel that far on foot during that time. So I would look for the device moving along this interstate, and I would look for a vehicle or something that could convey the device along that interstate. So sometimes it can show us a movement from one place to another as well.
If you're standing in a fixed location with a cellular device, presumably it's going to bounce off one tower, or the location will be fixed. If you're moving in a vehicle, how is the phone or the device interacting with the towers?
So I always tell people that devices are like divas. They always want the best signal. So not necessarily the strongest signal, but the best signal. So devices always make a batting order. So they may actually see all three of these towers at one time. But when the device is here, this device says the best signal is coming from this cell phone tower. When the device arc is here, the device has switched its batting order and said, this is the tower that I am communicating with on the cellular network that has the best signal. And then when the device is in this area, it's again switched towers and said, this is now this is called network optimization. This is now the cell site that has the best signal. So the device, the network always, and the cell phone always want to use the best signal, not necessarily the strongest signal, the best signal for that. And then our location of the device would be at or near this arc on the last slide.
So the phone is always switching to whatever will provide, whichever tower or cell site will provide the best signal.
Absolutely. I've seen records where a person walks across the house, and when they're on the west side of the house, it uses one cell site. When they're on the east side of the house, it uses another cell site because it's the best signal.
All right. And so that was cell network location information. You talked about per call measurement data. This is about Snapchat geo-targeting information. Could you explain what's different and distinct about this geo-targeting information?
Yes. So geo-targeting information was developed by marketing companies as a marketing strategy to deliver more relevant content to a user's phone based on where they're geographically located. And Snapchat will say this, it says it in its disclosure policies, it collects three types of information. That's locational information. It also collects your address, your area code, your cell phone number, and your zip code, so it knows where you're at. There you go. It knows where you're at. So the three types of information that Snapchat collects to target ads to you is IP information, GPS coordinates, and cellular data. And then Snapchat gives some broad information about the accuracy of its geo-targeting information. So at the country level, its geo-targeting information is 90% accurate. At the state level, it's 75 to 80% accurate. And then its accuracy varies on that based on zip codes, cities, and regions. And they don't give us more specifics than that.
So Snapchat's geo-targeting information comes from three sources of location information, and then you can compare this information from Snapchat with cell phone network location data.
We absolutely cross-reference it, yes.
What are we seeing here?
So this is just an example of what a radius, so Snapchat is saying this phone is at or near at this date and time, so on June 17th, 2021, at 8:11:25 p.m. This phone is in this bubble, and this bubble is 36.6 meters. So the circle of the radius is determined by latitude and longitude, and that's going to be in the center right here. That's going to be your center.
So it's just giving us some information about accuracy, essentially, correct?
Yes.
All right, what are we seeing here?
So this is just to give you a reminder or cue. When you see mapping for Houston Danker for his cell phone number or Snapchat, it's going to be red. When you see mapping information for Ryan Cooper, we are just using his cell phone in this, it's going to be green. And then when you see mapping information or visual depiction of records from Karina Cooper, it's going to be blue for US Cellular, Snapchat, and then there's some Google information. Yeah.
All right. You've noted key locations in Traer, Iowa. What are these key locations?
Right. So this is just to orientate you to the lay of the land and where things are at here. We're going to start here on the west side of the screen, so north is up on all of the slides today. Ryan and Karina Cooper's residence is here, 1846 K Avenue. This pin just represents the geographic location of their house. Aaron Cooper's residence is here, 1856 Highway 63. This is Highway 63. It turns into 96 here, and then Highway 63 at this intersection continues north-south. Here we have the city of Traer. This is 2nd Street, or Highway 8, as it's referred to. And then Houston Danker's residence is going to be on the east side of this slide, and it's 2798 Highway 8. This is just a different view. So the thing that I want you to notice is we have more population density here. This is obviously the city of Traer. You can see more streets. Again, this is the Cooper residence, pretty rural, surrounded by farmland. I think there's one small residence here and one residence here, one here. This is the Aaron Cooper residence, and then Mr. Danker's residence. So we're just showing you the geographics that this is rural Iowa. Okay.
And what are we seeing here?
This is, again, just to show you our roads here. This is 63 north-south. This is Highway 63 east-west, and then this is K Avenue. Their street address is actually K Avenue, so you'd come up here, and then there's a driveway to their house right
And is
there.
this just a satellite view of that same property?
Yep, it's just to get you used to looking at the maps so you know where things are geographically located at the maps. And we're going to show you the maps in the simplest format, so you're going to see them mapped in the other sequence. But we just want you to recognize that there's farmland around here, K Avenue, Highway 63, and then here's our T intersection here.
All right. So what are we seeing in this slide here?
So Ryan Cooper's cell phone starts its night out at the Traer Sports Complex, and when you're seeing the darkening of the lines here, we call that pancaking. It just means that the phone's in the general geographic location for a long time. So our arcs appear darker, and then what you're going to see is that the phone is going to leave the sports complex. It's going to go up through Traer, and then the device is going to end up in the general vicinity of the Cooper residence here at 1846 K Avenue. And the time frame of that is the travel here from the general vicinity of the Traer Sports Complex to there. There we go. Was 7:40 to 8:02. So if you look at Google driving distance, so if you were just to put that in your map and say, what is the driving distance from the Traer Sports Complex going up 2nd Avenue and through Traer, which is the path that I see the device travel. Google driving distance says that that takes about 10 minutes. So the device, when it starts to migrate from the area of the sports complex, Ryan's device, I don't know what they had going on that night, but it takes them, this device on this trip, approximately 22 minutes from the Traer Sports Complex to the residence, the Cooper residence at 1846 K Avenue. Okay. So this is the time.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just returning to that previous
Okay,
slide.
sorry.
Is this an example then of, you mentioned that this was pancaking, showing that the device is just in the same place for a period of time. I see the clock running there.
Yep, and you can actually see the actual times of all of these slides. And then it's also just to kind of orientate your eye to movement. The device is going to eventually leave the Traer Sports Complex, kind of go up through Traer, and then end up at the residence. So this is the device moving there, and there's the device at the residence. Definitively at 8:02, I'd say the device is in the vicinity of 1846 K Avenue.
And this is the night of June 17th, 2021?
Yes, sir. Okay. And then this is just to show two things. Again, we're just getting used to the pancaking or the darker lines. So this is just a brief time period from 8:02 to 8:26 p.m. And then you can see this is the cell site, but this is our timing data, so we can be more specific and say the device is generally in the vicinity of the residence. And then that phone call in the lower left-hand corner right here at 8:26 is the last time that I can say there was a manipulation on that device. So at 8:26 p.m., Ryan Cooper's cell phone made an outgoing phone call. Okay.
All right, what are we seeing here? It says June 18th, 2021, 4:43 a.m.
Yes, sir. So we're seeing our heavy arcs here. This is just a still image. We didn't, this is about the time that law enforcement arrives on scene, and we're just seeing that this device is stationary near 1846 K Avenue. And also what we know is that this device was recovered by investigators at 1846 K Avenue. So independent corroboration. The records tell us that this device is there, and the investigators physically were able to recover the actual device from the residence.
So based on the location information that you received from U.S. Cellular as well as that outgoing phone call, does it appear to you that Ryan Cooper's device left the residence there at 1846 K Avenue on the night that he was killed?
No.
And that was information for Ryan Cooper's phone. This is Karina Cooper's phone, correct?
Yes, sir. And you're going to see this in blue. We've put the blue up there just so you know. This is what Karina's phone was doing on June 17th and 18th of 2021.
And this is sourced from U.S. Cellular records and Snapchat information?
There are two sources in here, and I'll make sure to point out the difference between them. So again, we see Karina's phone on June 17th, 2021 at the Trayer Sports Complex. It starts at the Trayer Sports Complex, and then you're going to see here shortly that Karina Cooper's device is going to leave the Trayer Sports Complex, and it's going to follow the same path over to 1846 K Avenue. And then, can we just replay that slide one more time? Go forward for me. Thanks. So this is when the device is stationary at the Trayer Sports Complex. So I'm just showing that her device is also at the Trayer Sports Complex. Counselor, can you go forward to the next slide? I just want to show the Snapchat, sorry. And this is just to show that she has Snapchat information around the Trayer Sports Complex between the time of 5:48 and 7:40. The specific times are indicated on here. So we have cell phone information from U.S. Cellular, and then we also have Snapchat information that agree that this device is in the general vicinity of the Trayer Sports Complex. And then this is the device traveling from the Trayer Sports Complex through Trayer, and the device is ultimately going to end up at 1846 K Avenue. But in reviewing these records, obviously I watched them hundreds of times, I see what I think is a little pause in there, and we will show you on Snapchat where that is on the next slide here. So this is the device leaving. Do you see some overlap of arcs here? I think this device stopped at Pizza Palace on the way home in Trayer, Iowa. So we see that on Snapchat, and I see just a little pancaking and overlapping in town. And then ultimately, there it is, right there. And then this is Snapchat to show by this time this evening that the device ends up at home. It takes about 20 minutes and 25 seconds for her to get home. And then the U.S. Cellular data also agrees that Ms. Cooper's device is home during this time frame. So this is just to show from 8:01 p.m. to 4:43 in the morning. And then we do have some Snapchat locational information that shows the device is in the general vicinity of 1846 K Avenue. So our data is in agreement.
And is this just the U.S. Cellular information, and it also has an outgoing call as well?
Yep, and then we have one outgoing phone call. So the last time on the 17th of June 2021 that I see a device manipulation, so this is a human manipulation, is at that 8:04 time frame. Last outgoing call there.
Okay, and that's on June 17th at 8:04.
Yes. But the device is there at 4:43 in the morning and we know this device makes the 911 call. And then this is just to kind of give you an idea of Snapchat patterns are really granular like this, what Snapchat looks like from 8/11, and then the Snapchat location information, we don't get any additional Snapchat information for Karina Cooper's Snapchat account after 3:33 a.m. in the morning. It ends.
But was there Snapchat information around 3 in the morning and up until 3:33 in the morning?
3:33 is our last data point. So there's consistent Snapchat information from 8:11 p.m. This is locational information from Snapchat. So something is triggering locations in Snapchat. This is geo-targeting information. And we have that consistently on an ongoing basis from 8:11 p.m. till 3:33 in the morning. And then there is no more.
And so based on the information you had provided before, this would be user manipulation of the phone, including sending Snapchat messages, correct?
You know, there's lots of reasons Snapchat doesn't tell us exactly what's going on, but something is happening in an interaction with Snapchat that there's geo-targeting information being recorded.
And that went on through 3:33 a.m. and then it stopped?
It did stop.
What are we seeing here?
And then I just wanted to show you the last user manipulated event. So here's our cell site. Remember, this is our general flashlight example, but here's 1846 K Avenue. So on June 17th, 2021 at 8:04 p.m., this is the last outgoing call on this date. And then our first outgoing call here is June 18th, 2021 at 4:30 a.m.
And again, that's from Karina Cooper's cell phone at 4:30 a.m., correct?
Yes, sir.
What are we seeing here?
This is just a visual depiction of records so I can sequence them from you. So what you're seeing here is at 4:30 a.m., Karina Cooper's cell phone calls Aaron Cooper's cell phone. This is a connected call recorded on the U.S. Cellular records, and that call is 27 seconds in length. At 4:31, Aaron Cooper's cell phone calls Karina Cooper's cell phone. That's a 1-second call, so it may or may not have actually rang, but the network recorded this event here. And then at 4:32, Aaron Cooper calls Karina Cooper, and this phone call is 22 seconds in length. This information here and here that are underlined, this is from the Tama County dispatch records for 911. So when you call 911 from your cell phone, that the cell phone companies purposely don't put that in business records, because if you're calling and someone that's with you in a situation is the bad person, and they have access to your cell phone records, they don't want that to show. So cell phone companies don't necessarily show those in business records, but we know this from the Tama County dispatch logs. At 4:33 in the morning, Karina Cooper calls 911. And the duration on this call is 4 minutes and 59 seconds. And then shortly after that, Aaron Cooper also calls 911. That's at 4:34. And that phone call lasts 7 minutes and 41 seconds. At 4:39, dispatch puts, and they're actually on the phone with him the whole time, puts Aaron Cooper out at 1846 K Avenue. And then 4:42, dispatch logs the first deputy on the scene from the 911 dispatch logs.
All right, and this is Houston Danker's U.S. Cellular and Snapchat information, correct?
Yes. So this is just, Mr. Danker works in Van Horn, Iowa, and this is just him progressing up to his residence here. So this is a snapshot of time on, or I'm sorry, the cellular records from June 17th, 2021, from 6:21 p.m. to 6:58. So this is just him leaving work and going to his residence. Okay.
All right, this says device trip 1. What information are we seeing?
So first, what you're seeing here, we'll just let it play is the round trip. This device is going to leave 2798 Highway 8. It's going to come up kind of through Traer. It's going to come a little bit here. We're going to break this down in a minute. Just past 1846, the Cooper residence here. So this is the first arc. Can we go back one slide? Oh, forward. Sorry, I apologize. So this is the device traveling up. This is its furthest forward progression, and this is the device traveling down. And the time frame on that is 6:58 p.m. to 7:30. So Google driving distance is 9 miles. Google says it takes about 11 minutes to get there one way, and the whole trip was 31 minutes and 21 seconds. So starting from 2798, going up and through, kind of the furthest device progression here, and then returning back the same way to 2798. So in this entire set of records, this device only drives by 1846 K Avenue 3 times once, and that's on June 17th, 2021. So I'm showing you the 3 trips that this device makes past the residence. Okay, so this is just to show you, this is where the device started. This is where the device ended on the trip out here. So this is from 6:58 to 7:14. So this is all part of that animation we just showed you. The next slide will kind of show you the return trip here. So by 7:14, we call this the most forward progression, the farthest forward progression there. By 7:14, that's as far as this device goes forward. This device is turning around here. By 7:16, I can see that the arcs are now moving to the east, and this device has turned around, so it drove by the residence once this way, and then it's returning past the residence here, and it's ultimately going to go back to Mr. Danker's home residence.
All right, this says 7:14 to 7:30.
Yep, so this is just to show from our farthest forward progression to the return arc that I see near the residence at 2798. That's the return trip time, and that takes about 15 minutes.
All right, what are we seeing in device trip 2?
So device trip 2, we can just let it play. We're going to see that this device is going to leave the residence here. It's going to go up through Traer, and then it's going to continue on to Gladbrook. It's going to be in Gladbrook for a limited amount of time, around 5 minutes, and then it's going to drive back past the Cooper residence up through Traer, and then Mr. Danker's device is ultimately returning to his home residence here at 2798 Highway 8. So as the crow flies, it's 17 miles, 17.1 miles, and this trip from arc to arc takes 39 minutes and 4 seconds, and that's pretty close to what Google Drive Time says. Google Drive Time says from the Danker residence here to Gladbrook, it should take 20 minutes one way, so 40 minutes round trip. So this is pretty consistent with what Drive Time says on Google. And then this is just a blow up of that to show when the device is going by the house, and we're seeing some blue here, as you can see. So there is Snapchat activity from Karina Cooper's Snapchat account near the 1846 K Avenue at 8:13:35, and then the red obviously is Mr. Danker's device traveling west towards the Gladbrook area.
All right, the next slide here.
This is just to show that Mr. Danker's in Gladbrook for a limited amount of time. This is our farthest outward progressing arc. That's at 8:20. And this arc here at 8:25 is showing that the device is returning, starting to move eastward. So the device is in Gladbrook for less than 5 minutes on device trip number 2. And then this is just to show what the times are on our arcs, and then we see our forward progression. So here's 8:30, here's 8:31, that's going to be this arc here, and then 8:32. So it's just showing that the device is moving to the east, and then we also see that Ms. Cooper has Snapchat locational data at 8:29 during that time as well. And then ultimately, this is just to show you from arc to arc the device furthest forward progression, and then it returns back. So.
All right, you've marked this as device trip number 3.
I did. So this trip is from, the device is going to do something different here. So this trip is on June 17th, 2021 from 9:04 to 9:40 p.m. So the device is going to leave from the Danker residence. But what you're going to see here, and we'll break this down, is that this device is largely stationary in this area for about 7 minutes, and then it's going to return a slightly different way here, come back up, and return home. We'll break that down for you more specifically. So the device on the third trip leaves the same way, but it hangs out in a specific area for a little bit. We have some pancaking, and X marks the spot stationary movement, and then it ultimately returns home a different way. And we'll break that down more here. And we can see that there is some Snapchat activity here as the device, Houston Danker's device. This is Karina Cooper's residence. And we can see that there's some Snapchat activity while the device crosses. And then ultimately, when we're seeing these X's and this device is in this area, we'll see it on a different slide.
Okay, you're saying that you're seeing Snapchat data from Ms. Cooper as Mr. Danker's device crosses that area near 1846 K Avenue.
Yes, I am. So there's Snapchat activity on Karina Cooper's phone, and Mr. Danker's device is locationally in the vicinity of this area right here.
And you said that the device was in that area, and you said about 7 minutes, if I understand correctly. You mean in the area of Ryan Cooper and Karina Cooper's residence, correct?
I do. We'll see that more specifically on the next slide. Okay. Can you go ahead and hit play? So from 9:19 to 9:26 p.m., I don't know if you're able to pause this. This device, do we see our pancaking kind of stationary here? A lot of X marks the spots here, crossover, and when we see that, we know the device. We can be more specific on where this device is located. And also the phenomenon of, on that last slide, just let it play again. This device is using 4 different cell phone towers in this 7-minute and 9-second period. So the device is in this general area from 9:19 to 9:26, about 7 minutes and 9 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4 cell sites. So the device really isn't moving much during that time.
What are we seeing here?
This is just to show from the arc coming back when the phone is returning to the way home. Like this is the first arc, this is the second arc, and then the next slide will show you the route of travel. So the device goes, returns to 2798 a different way. And we're going to break that down on the next slide. So the device is going to come down here. You're going to see it move along here, up, and then ultimately end up at 2798. So the device returns home. It takes a different route the last trip by.
And so when you say it takes a different route, you mean this third trip differs from trip number 1 and 2 in terms of the route taken to return home?
On the return route. The return route is more gravel and rural roads. So the return route isn't just back through Trayer, back to the house. It goes out this way. It's in this area for a period of time, and then it comes down and ultimately returns to 2798. And
you also indicated that here on the bottom right-hand part of your slide. It says 14 minutes and 30 seconds. Was that their recorded travel time?
Yes, so it's very fast. The Google drive time, so Google figures on the speed limit. The Google drive time for this return route from roughly 1846 K Avenue over to 2798 is actually 18 minutes. So this device is absolutely moving at a higher rate of speed than recommended drive time.
And just as a reminder, we're at 9:26 to 9:40. This is the night before Ryan is killed, correct?
Yes.
What are we seeing here?
And then this is just to show that Mr. Danker's device from 9:40 p.m. until 5:22 a.m. Ultimately, the device leaves the residence to go to work. It goes down to where we know Mr. Danker works at, is at home. So the device is stationary there. And then we don't get on so the device is home. We don't see it really go anywhere during this time frame. And we don't have a lot of Snapchat location information for Mr. Danker's device. The last Snapchat location information we get from this device, if you can flip to the next slide for me, please, is at 10:47 and 10:48 p.m. on June 17th. And then there is no more locational information on this device going into the early morning hours when the device leaves. So the device leaves, this is the last locational information I have, and the device leaves the residence.
So if I understand, returning to your previous slide, Mr. Danker's cell phone was at or around his residence throughout the night, including the time that Ryan Cooper was killed, until the next morning around 5:22 a.m.
That is correct.
And what are we seeing here at 5:22?
This is just to show you that the device has departed the residence here. So we're at 5:22 and we see the device moving away from the residence, and the device ultimately leaves.
All right. Showing you some information here, it looks like it says U.S. Cellular and has Karina Cooper's cell phone number and device history. What is the information that we're seeing here?
Yep. So I just want you to recognize our last 4 digits here. This is Karina Cooper's cell phone number. Our last 4 digits here are 6135. So this is actual subscriber information. It's just a snip from U.S. Cellular business records. And this is the Apple iPhone 8 Plus. So the cell phone company tells us what this cell phone is. And then the last service that this device has is, this device was seized by law enforcement on June 18th, 2021, from Ms. Cooper at the residence, at the Cooper residence. But the service on this is ended or switched on June 21st, 2021. And if you look at the time here, 11:27:33 a.m. on June 21st, the service is ended. And then the service begins on this device, which is an Android-based phone. We have our same phone number here. So Karina Cooper switches her service to a different cell phone. This is 11:27:34, so just seconds after that. This cell phone is in service. This Samsung Galaxy S5 is in service. She keeps service with this phone number until June 2nd, 2021. And then we see here, if we look, we have another device switch. We've switched devices again. So the final device, and then we don't see an end service date here, meaning this may be the device she still has, or during the set of records we have, this device was still in use. This device is used from July 2nd, 2021, and it's an iPhone SE 2nd generation, also an Apple.
All right. And this final information says Karina Cooper, Snapchat, and Google. What information do we see here?
Right. So we obviously see On June 21st, 2021, this information here, the top two entries are from a search warrant to Google. We can see that at 4:28 p.m., Google Chrome, so an internet browser was visited, and Google Chrome actually recorded this as Karina Cooper's Snapchat password was reset. Then shortly after that, 1 minute later, Google Chrome records that they sent an email about Snapchat. So if you reset your password, Snapchat emails you to make sure it's truly you. And the email was sent, and it was a Snapchat email saying your password has been reset. And then this piece of information here, this is an actual snip from the Snapchat records here. This information is on June 22nd, 2021 at 2:54 p.m. Karina Cooper's Snapchat is deleted. That is a user-manipulated event. You have to go on and physically delete your Snapchat. And I don't know if you can see this because of the other screen, but over in the far corner, it just shows that Snapchat's business records record the status of this Snapchat account is that it was deleted. And that's a user-deleted account.
And perhaps you could show that information on the smaller display for the jury. I think they may be able to see that better. You can stand up.
Oh, it's eating it. If you look at the lower right-hand corner, the last column where there's gray shading, it just says deleted. And that time is in, business records often come in universal time coordinated, so we have to convert that to our time, and the time offset's -5. So the time here in Central Standard Time is right here. It's 2:54:12 p.m. that Snapchat records on June 22nd that Karina Cooper's Snapchat account was deleted.
So 2 days after Ryan's death, she's resetting her Snapchat password. What's the relevance of the fact that this is done through Chrome?
So she wouldn't have her phone. So if you log onto your Snapchat account from a different device, you're going to have to remember your password. So there's a possibility she didn't know her password, or she just wanted to change it, or the person that was logging in just wanted to change it.
Essentially, that would allow you to gain access to your Snapchat account.
Right. You can't gain access to your Snapchat account on a different device that you haven't been logged into unless you can provide your password.
And then the account was fully deleted approximately 4 days after Ryan's death.
That's correct, on June 22nd, 2021.
And were you able to determine, you talked a little bit about pattern of life, did Karina Cooper previously use Snapchat frequently?
Yes.
Please explain.
So she used Snapchat. We did recover some content on Snapchat. She was in a number of texting groups, one like the Housewives of Tama County, where it was a bunch of other people, and they would talk about kids, trips they were planning, things like that. She used Snapchat a lot for pictures of her children or cute little videos of her kids, them doing activities, riding bikes, baseball, and some communications with relating to like business or hair appointments, all sorts of things. So a frequent Snapchat user, which isn't uncommon for a business owner.
And we also saw some Snapchat messages between Karina Cooper and Houston Danker at 3:30 in the morning on the night of the homicide regarding shell casings and other things of that nature, including her making a statement to Houston Danker, go, which was the last communication that we saw between
Objection, Your Honor. I'd like to ask a question.
Yep. Go ahead and ask your question, Mr. Winkle.
Thank you. Did she frequently communicate with Houston Danker via Snapchat?
We don't see that in the business records from Snapchat, because once a user deletes a snap from Snapchat's server, it's gone forever. So we don't recover the particular messages that the counselor was referencing regarding remember the casings or go from the business records from Snapchat, because if you delete something from the Snapchat server, Snapchat gets rid of it. They don't preserve it. So when we serve just a search warrant, that's why we serve warrants to multiple sources. That's why we examine the phone. We didn't see it in this particular set of records.
And that wouldn't be seen in this set of records, but that's information, as Ms. Lord testified to, and based on your training experience, that may be recovered from devices themselves.
Yes, that's why we always look for multiple sources of information.
I have no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Cross-examination, Ms. Watt.
Yes, please. Detective Witt?
Special agent, detective,
Okay.
it's fine.
Special Agent Witt. When we're retrieving things through a search warrant with Snapchat, I think I understood you. It kind of depends on whether you're having your settings to save the snaps in the phone.
That's one of the factors, yes.
Okay, so I know that sometimes you can have the messages disappear immediately, you can have the messages disappear after 24 hours in particular conversations, right?
Yes, Snapchat is user controlled, so in the case of an application like Snapchat, users have a lot of choices over if a message is kept or a message is deleted.
Okay, and so if I have my Snapchat messages with a particular person set to delete after 24 hours, after 24 hours, Snapchat doesn't have it anymore.
The business records don't have them anymore. We may be able to recover it from a secondary source, such as an examination of a phone.
Right, and I understand in this case we got a lot of Snapchat information from the phone itself. But Snapchat, I think there's just some misinformation that things are always recoverable from Snapchat. We're not getting it from Snapchat, correct?
So the content of
The ones that aren't saved, I'm asking about the ones that get deleted after 24 hours. We're not going to be able to send a search warrant to Snapchat and get those from Snapchat.
There's one exception to that. So if we get a preservation letter in really quickly, it might be preserved on the server before Snapchat's cleared it, but that's a very slim chance. So generally speaking, yes, ma'am, if a Snapchat is deleted, we won't be able to recover it from a search warrant to Snapchat.
Okay. Sometimes from the phone, as in this case.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that part of the records you got from Snapchat indicated that Karina was in some group chats on Snapchat.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you were able to recover a bunch of messages from those groups from Snapchat.
Yes. So a preservation letter was sent really quickly that morning, and I think we were able to get the content because the preservation letter just takes, when you send it to Snapchat and they receive it and they acknowledge receipt, they just preserve a snapshot of what is on their server relating to that account at that particular time.
Okay, so it would tell us what group she was in at the time that you send that preservation letter.
There was some content with some of the groups as well.
Right, and that would be dependent upon whether they had in the group had it set up to delete over time or just for the snaps to remain, right?
I don't know who owned or was the administrator on all of those groups too, because sometimes it can depend on if you're the facilitator of the group, if you start the group, you may be able to delete the entire group, but if you're just a user on the group, you may only be able to delete your personal conversations.
So at the time of June 18th, though, she was still in a Snapchat group about like Housewives of Traer or whatever it was called.
There was some content recovered. I guess I can say that Snapchat group still existed. I don't know. She was in that group. I just don't know if there was particular snaps. I can't testify to that. I didn't look at it.
Right. I'm only wanting to know, does it show us at least that she was still in the group?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have an answer for why Houston's phone doesn't have as much GPS data from Snapchat?
So as with all applications, you can adjust privacy settings and choose not to share your location. You can opt in or opt out of things. So Snapchat's largely user controlled. I don't know what particular settings he had on both his phone and then within the app of Snapchat. There just wasn't as much location information. Sometimes it's usage too.
Okay. So, but somebody on Snapchat, I can choose to have my location update on the Snap Map, right?
Yes, you can.
From the information that we have from Karina's phone, of the search warrants and all that, does it appear that her location would have been on and showing on the Snapchat, or do we not know? Snap Map.
So Snapchat doesn't tell us this information came particularly from a Snapchat. Snapchat just tells us generally that there is location information that they have recorded in their business records. They don't say this is particularly from Snapchat or this is particularly from an IP address. This is particularly from a geolocation address.
Okay. And so we also don't know what triggers the GPS location updating on Snapchat?
So they don't tell us, no, they don't tell us the specific trigger of why we have location information at that time.
Is it at least safe to assume, though, that given we only have a couple of data points for Houston's GPS from Snapchat, that would at least suggest to us that his privacy settings are more restricted either on his phone or on Snapchat than Karina's would have been?
I don't know that, like, I don't know that I can, that would be one possibility.
Okay. With Houston driving by this residence, I just want to make sure I understood your testimony. So when we see that he was red, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So when we see the arc there that kind of only goes to where, what is it, 63, where it makes the turn, is that, are we saying then that that's all the further his phone goes, at least the first trip?
Yes, that's the first trip, the furthest device progression is kind of at that T intersection just past the Cooper residence, and then it returns back to his residence.
And then the second trip, he goes all the way to Gladbrook, but not for long.
Yes, under 5 minutes.
Then the third trip, I didn't quite understand where you were saying his phone likely was.
So between the intersection where 63 starts running north and south, that T intersection, and the Cooper residence, really for that 7-minute time period, that device is kind of generally in that general area. And then the device returns home, but it goes I'll call it the southern route. It goes the alternate route on the last trip home.
But do we know, for example, was he at their house?
I can just say that the device was in the general vicinity of that area.
Okay. So, I mean, it's possible that he's like across the street in a cornfield as well?
Yes, it's possible.
Okay. You did mention that the device is traveling quickly to get from that hangout point to the house, but you said you took gravel roads?
Well, it takes the southern route. I do think that some of those roads are gravel. I know they are. Some of the roads are gravel there. It's not hard pavement the entire way.
Do you know what the speed limit is on gravel roads?
I do not know. I just know that it exceeds what the Google Drive time. It was faster than the Google Drive time.
I was just wondering if it's a common occurrence that people drive faster on gravel roads than what the speed limit is, which might help explain how that device is going so fast compared to Google.
Well, I can't speak to people generally on if they feel comfortable on gravel or not.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Mr. Engel?
Defense asked you, based on that 7-minute period on the night prior to Ryan's death, that Houston Danker's device was near 1846 K Avenue. If he could have been in a cornfield, is it also possible that he could have been at the house or meeting with Karina?
That's equally as possible, yes, sir. It's in the general vicinity.
No further questions.
Anything further?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You may step down. State prepared to call sex witness. And while next witness is coming in, I'm going to stand up and stretch. Anybody else want to, feel free. All right, why don't we all go ahead and have a seat. And is the state prepared to call its next witness?
Yes, Judge, thank you. The state would call Dr. Kelly Cruz.
I'm assuming that's you. Yep. You want to come up to have a seat to my far left? Dr. Cruz, I'm going to go ahead and swear you in. If you please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in these proceedings will be the truth?
I do.
Okay. And then for the record, can you please provide us with your first name and your last name and spell them?
My name is Kelly Cruz. It's Kellylly, Kruse.
All right, Mr. Ringel, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Cruz, how are you employed?
I am an associate state medical examiner at the Iowa office of the state medical examiner.
Can you talk about your educational background, please?
After I graduated from high school, I attended Tulane University. There I earned a Bachelor's of Science in Anthropology. I then attended St. George's University. I first earned a Master's of Public Health degree, and then I attended their medical school. I graduated from medical school in 2013. From 2013 to 2017, I attended and completed an anatomic and clinical pathology residency program located in New Jersey. And from 2017 to 2018, I completed a forensic pathology fellowship program at the Chief Medical Examiner's Office of Maryland.
Can you talk a little bit about your employment history as well?
I came to work in Iowa following my fellowship, so this here has been my only full-time job. In terms of additional work, I provide consultation autopsies for local hospitals in the Des Moines area.
How are you currently employed then?
I am currently full-time employed by the State Medical Examiner's Office.
What is forensic pathology?
Forensic pathology is a specialized area of medicine. It falls underneath pathology. Pathology is the study of disease and disease processes. In the most common setting, a pathologist is in the hospital. They look at organs, they look at blood, they look at blood work, chemistry to diagnose natural diseases. A forensic pathologist or forensic pathology goes a step further. We have knowledge of those natural disease processes, but then we also have knowledge of injury. And we specifically look at how disease processes and injuries can lead to death.
So you're employed as a medical examiner, then what does a medical examiner do?
A medical examiner is a physician, and that's, in Iowa, we have a fairly unique system. So each county has their own medical examiner. They're all physicians, but most of them aren't forensic pathologists like me. Most of them will then use their medical knowledge and training to determine if an autopsy is necessary. If they think an autopsy is necessary, then they will send the deceased individual to the state medical examiner's office in Ankeny, and then myself and 5 other state medical examiners will perform an autopsy on them and determine why they died.
Can you explain for the jury what an autopsy is?
An autopsy is an examination of a deceased individual. The main purpose is to determine their cause of death, so the reason why they died. As part of that examination, we document injury, we document natural disease processes, and we will interpret ancillary testing like toxicology.
Do you collect evidence as well during the autopsy process?
We do. We have standard evidence that we collect for every individual. We will collect a blood stain card, so take blood and put it on a card for potential testing. We will take fingerprints. We also collect blood, vitreous fluid from the eye, and urine if it's available for toxicology testing. Any additional evidence collection would be done at the request of law enforcement.
What is toxicology?
Toxicology is the testing of a specimen, usually blood, for alcohol, drugs of abuse, prescribed medications.
You mentioned cause of death. What is the cause of death?
The cause of death is a process that ultimately leads to a person's passing. It can be a natural disease, it can be an injury, it can be a specific drug. There are a lot of options when it comes to cause of death.
What is manner of death?
Manner of death describes the circumstances surrounding a person's death. In contrast to cause of death, we only have 5 options for manner of death. We have natural, so death due purely to natural disease. We have accident, which is death due to unforeseen circumstances. A good example would be a car crash. We have suicide, death at the hands of another, or death at the hands of oneself. Homicide, death at the hands of another, and then undetermined, which is a manner that is chosen when we might not have enough information to choose one of the other manners, or we have 2 competing manners.
Approximately how many autopsies would you say you've conducted?
I've conducted over 2,000 autopsies.
Is there a standard procedure for conducting an autopsy?
We abide by procedures that are set forth by the National Association of Medical Examiners at our state medical examiner's office here in Iowa. We have our own set standard operating procedures that we follow closely for every autopsy, regardless of how a person died.
As a medical examiner, do you attempt to obtain a history prior to the autopsy?
Yes.
Why do you do that?
History is quite helpful with the autopsy process. We have that standard operating procedure, but there may be components of the history or circumstances surrounding someone's death that might lead me to order additional testing. Say if someone was in a car, I may order carbon monoxide testing, which I wouldn't do otherwise. It might encourage me to send certain organs to a specialist or order special toxicology testing.
In order to obtain that history, what type of information do you review?
Our office requires at least a small amount of information about the person who's coming to our office from that county medical examiner and the personnel there. They have county investigators as well. The amount of information varies, so it's really just case dependent, but we try and provide guidance and training to those county personnel so that what they give to us is helpful for the autopsy.
We talked briefly about evidence collection. What's the purpose of evidence collection during an autopsy?
Our standard evidence collection with the bloodstain card would be if we needed to test for DNA in the future. Fingerprints are taken potentially to confirm identity. Family may also request photographs of fingerprints for things like jewelry and tattoos. Other evidence collection includes fingernail clippings, which might be helpful if there's another person's DNA on those clippings. We'll collect head hair, and that can be matched to something at a scene. Clothing that might potentially have some evidentiary value as well. It just depends on the case.
Do you collect projectiles and things of that nature as well?
Yes.
Any other standard components of an autopsy?
All of our autopsies at the state medical examiner include both the external and internal examination, regardless of how a person died. So we look at everything on the outside of the body and the inside of the body to diagnose natural disease and injury. Depending on the type of case, we may have that additional evidence collection. Also, depending on the type of case, we may perform x-rays prior to the autopsy.
You complete a report in association with the autopsy that you complete?
Yes.
Did you perform an autopsy for Ryan Cooper?
Yes.
Do you remember when you performed that autopsy?
Yes, it was June 19th of 2021.
Do you recall how you received the body?
All bodies are transported, or at least we request that they're transported in a body bag. Counties have their own transportation system, either by funeral home or ambulance service. The body is brought to our office, it's placed in a cooler, and then removed from the cooler on day of autopsy.
And is that bag typically sealed?
Yes.
And how is that sealed?
It is sealed with a lock. So it is a plastic device that has a number on it. That number is documented at the scene when that bag is closed and the lock is placed in between the zipper pulls. And then that lock number is documented at autopsy to confirm that the bag has not been opened in between the body going from the scene to autopsy time.
And you received Ryan Cooper's body in a body bag, correct?
Yes.
And was it locked or sealed as you just described?
Yes.
Any reason to believe the bag had been opened or tampered with?
No.
And did you conduct your autopsy according to the protocol that you just outlined previously?
Yes.
Did you take photographs during the autopsy that you conducted?
Yes.
Would those assist you with your testimony here today?
Yes.
Your Honor, if I may approach with State's Exhibits number 286 through 293.
You may.
Again, States 286 through 293. You recognize those?
Yes, these are photographs taken during the autopsy of Ryan Cooper.
Fair and accurate representations of what you observed during that autopsy?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the State would move to admit States 286 through 293.
No
Okay.
objection.
All
No
right.
objection.
All right, then States Exhibits 286 through 293 are admitted.
State requests permission to publish.
All right.
Starting here with States Exhibit 286, what do we see here?
This is a photograph that is taken of that body bag that Mr. Cooper's body was received in. The blue plastic material here is that lock I described with a unique number. The body bag itself also is tagged with the name of the person inside, and it says Ryan R. Cooper.
States 287, what do we see here?
This is a photograph of Mr. Cooper as he was received. This is before his body has been touched by our office, so it is his body exactly as it was in the body bag.
288, what do we see here?
This is Mr. Cooper's upper body after his clothing has been removed and he's been cleaned.
And that's part of the standard procedure of an autopsy?
Yes.
Why is that done?
The cleaning process?
Yes.
Many different things such as injuries can be obscured by blood. So the body is documented as received with that blood. It's photographed. And then once everything is appropriately documented, the blood is cleaned to see if there is any additional injury that we couldn't see underneath the blood.
Once you'd completed that cleaning process, anything of note?
After Mr. Cooper's body had been cleaned, he had a number of different injuries. The major injuries and the ones that caused his death were on his face. There's a gunshot wound here to the left cheek that can be seen in this photograph.
289, this is a close-up of Mr. Cooper's face, correct?
Yes.
What are we seeing in this photograph of relevance to you?
This is what we call an identification photograph. We take a photograph of everyone's face at autopsy. Part of my job is confirming identity of the deceased individual, so this photo would be compared to something like his driver's license photo. Of note in this photograph is one of 2 gunshot wounds on the left cheek, and around that gunshot wound are pinpoint red dots or abrasions, which is called stippling.
What is stippling?
Stippling is abrasions or little scratches in the skin that occur when unburnt gunpowder particles make contact with that skin. When a bullet is fired, or when a gun is fired, the bullet leaves the gun and it's accompanied by gunpowder. That gunpowder can be completely burned in the form of soot, or it can be unburned. And when that unburned gunpowder particle makes contact with the skin, it does so with such force that it causes a little scratch or abrasion in the skin, which is that stippling that we see here.
Does the presence of stippling tell you, as a medical examiner, anything about the location of the barrel of the gun in relation to Mr. Cooper's face?
Yes. The presence of soot and or stippling to me says that the gun was relatively close to the skin. Soot can't travel very far, really a matter of a few inches. The unburnt gunpowder particles can travel a bit farther, maybe a few feet. So the presence of that stippling indicates that the gun was likely within a few feet of the body.
State's exhibit number 290, what are we seeing here?
This is the left side of Mr. Cooper's face. Here, near the top of the photograph, is that one gunshot wound that we were able to appreciate with a picture of his entire face. And below it in the photograph is that second gunshot wound. He had a total of 2 gunshot wounds to the left cheek, one closer to his nose and one closer to his ear.
State's exhibit number 291, what are we seeing here?
This is a photograph of the base of Mr. Cooper's skull. In order to examine the brain, an incision is made over the top of the head, and the scalp is moved forward and backward in relation to that incision. The top of the skull is removed, and the brain itself is removed. And here we're looking at the base of the skull where that brain would usually sit. Traversing the skull are these metallic rods, and these show the wound paths of each of those gunshot wounds. So each gunshot wound was associated with injury to the skull and the brain, and bullets were recovered.
You talked about entrance wounds. Did you observe any exit wounds?
There were no exit wounds. Bullets were recovered from each gunshot wound.
It should be fairly clear we've had some testimony about what an entrance wound is, but what is an exit wound and what would you expect to see? Were you observing exit wounds?
The exit wound would typically be at the end of that wound path. For me, when I'm looking at a body and there are gunshot wounds, there are very clear differences, at least usually, between entrance wounds and exit wounds. Entrance wounds have a rounded appearance. It's a punched out defect. That bullet has a lot of energy and it pushes through the skin, creating a hole. So if I tried to, I couldn't push the edges of that wound together. There's missing tissue there. An exit wound has more of a slit-like appearance. The bullet loses a lot of energy along the wound path and essentially just pushes out through the skin, wherever that exit wound may be. So as you saw with the picture with the skull, I traced the wound paths. At the end of the wound path, there weren't any slit-like defects or any injuries that looked like exit wounds. And I did recover fragmented bullets, but 2 of them.
Showing you State's Exhibit 292, what do we see here?
These are 2 of the larger bullet fragments that were recovered from the brain. What we could also see with those rods moving through the skull is that the wound paths intersected. So they essentially terminated roughly in the same area of the brain. And so determining which of these 2 bullets was associated with the entrance wound closer to the nose or the ear was not something I could do.
And you said that the 2 shots terminated in the same area. Is that illustrated here in 291?
Yes, these rods, as they move through the brain, they start to intersect in this area, and that's where those bullet fragments were recovered.
These are the bullet fragments that were recovered. Do you know what you did then once you recovered those bullet fragments?
Once those bullet fragments are recovered, they're photographed, as we see here. They're then handled by an investigator within my office. They're packaged and sealed for chain of custody purposes, and they may pass that bullet off to a ballistics laboratory, off to law enforcement. I'm not involved in the process after that.
And these are the largest bullet fragments that you recovered in this case, correct?
Yes.
And when you recovered them, were they in this deformed state?
Yes.
Is that, based on both your training and your experience, typical for bullets to be deformed?
It depends on what the bullet hits in the body. They often deform when they hit bone.
State's Exhibit number 293, what are we seeing here?
These are additional bullet fragments. These were from the skull on the opposite side of the entrance wounds. The other bullet fragments were recovered from more inside the brain, so I packaged these separately.
And so State's Exhibit number 292, which I'm displaying here, which you described as bullet fragments, and State's Exhibit number 293, some smaller fragments. Is that the totality of projectiles or bullet fragments that you recovered from Mr. Cooper during the autopsy?
Yes.
And again, these were packaged and sealed and passed on to investigators, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Judge. Just let me know if it's going to be helpful as we go through these remaining questions to reference any of those exhibits. In your report, I believe you referred to the gunshot wounds as gunshot wound A and gunshot wound B. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a particular reason that you chose that nomenclature?
I will label my gunshot wounds with letters of the alphabet, and for me, it's for organizational purposes. I tend to go from the head to the toe, right to left. So essentially arbitrary, but to me, it helps organize my report.
There's not a timing component to the way that you've listed them. It's not first and second. Can you explain why that is?
Correct. So I don't have a way with my autopsy of determining which gunshot wound was inflicted first or second.
Another question that comes up with some frequency with medical examiners is the ability to estimate or make a statement regarding the time of death. Is that something that you're able to do when conducting an autopsy?
No.
Can you explain?
Time of death is quite difficult, and it's often portrayed as being something that's quite easy and can be done with great precision in movies and television. We don't have a lot to look at the autopsy that help us determine time of death. There are a number of different changes that happen in your body after you die, but as I indicated, the body is transported from the scene to our office, placed in a cooler, and I often perform the autopsy a day or two later. What I can say with these gunshot wounds is that Mr. Cooper was alive at the time he sustained them. I just don't know when he sustained them.
And so we'll go through gunshot wound A and B separately, but if I understand your testimony, you're saying he was alive at the time that each of these wounds was inflicted.
Yes.
Starting with gunshot wound A, you've listed that as left cheek medial, correct?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Medial meaning the one closer to the nose.
We've already seen that you were able to determine a path that that bullet traveled.
Yes.
Were you able to tell, or are you able to determine the specific position of the body at the time of the shot?
I can't tell the specific position of the body. When I determine the trajectory of a bullet or the direction of a wound path, it's only within that person's body.
And so how is that described then when you describe that path of travel?
The path of travel for gunshot wound A as well as gunshot wound B was from Mr. Cooper's left to his right, his front to his back, and upward.
When you say upward, what does that mean in relation to what?
Upward in relation going from his chin up to the top of his head.
And that was illustrated on the state's exhibit that showed the metal rods. That was the path of travel that you're describing, correct?
Yes.
With regard to gunshot wound A, was that shot independently fatal?
Yes, that shot was independently fatal.
And when you say independently fatal, what do you mean, just to make that clear?
Gunshot wound A injured a number of vital structures. It injured his skull and it injured his brain.
And that alone would have been sufficient for him to die?
Yes.
Without gunshot wound B, he would have died from that injury?
Most likely, yes.
Are you able to determine how long it would take him to die from that injury?
I can't say with certainty. Injuries to the brain are more quickly fatal than an injury to a different part of the body.
Would you describe it as rapidly fatal?
Rapidly fatal injuries, we try and use when there's injury to, say, the brain stem, but fairly quickly fatal.
And you stated he was alive at the time that this shot was fired or the wounds occurred. How do you know that?
When a person is alive at the time they sustain an injury, there's bleeding associated with that injury, which to me says that his heart was beating at the time. Let's say the bullet moved through his body, which then pushes blood out from injured blood vessels and into surrounding tissue.
What is the perimortem phase? What does that mean?
You can break timing up into different categories. There's the antemortem phase, so before a person died. The perimortem phase is really the time in which the person is dying, and then the postmortem phase after the person dies, say when I do the autopsy.
So it's gunshot wound A. You stated it was independently fatal and suffered while he was still alive, and also indicated that it would be quickly fatal. About gunshot wound B, I think you've described that as left cheek lateral. What does that mean?
Closer to the ear, still on the left cheek, and gunshot wound B was also in itself fatal.
So that's an independently fatal wound. Same question. I think you made this clear. He was alive at the time of that shot as well.
Yes.
Independently fatal, how would you describe? Because, well, first of all, what wounds did he suffer from gunshot wound B?
Gunshot wound B, he also had injury to the skull. The bullet then entered into the brain. It injured both sides of the larger part of the brain, the cerebrum, and then it also injured part of the brain stem, which serves as a way of your brain telling your body to do normal vital functions, and also a connection from the brain to your spinal cord.
Same question. Would you say this was also quickly fatal due to the nature of the wound?
Yes.
And then I'm assuming that you're observing the same thing and making the statement that he was alive at the time that this wound occurred. There was bleeding associated with the wound.
Yes.
With regard to the stippling that you observed, were you able to observe stippling from both gunshot wound A and, associated with gunshot wound A and gunshot wound B?
Yes.
What did you observe?
In terms of the stippling, I measured the distance from the abrasions from the edges of the wound. The gunpowder will fan out and create a rough circle. So there were two rough interlapping circles around both gunshot wounds.
Indicating to you, based on your prior testimony, that both shots were fired at close range?
Yes.
Any additional injuries that you observed that contributed to death?
No.
You performed a toxicological analysis, correct?
Yes.
Any relevance relevant information found in that analysis?
Toxicology was performed looking for alcohol and drugs of abuse, and it was negative.
Negative meaning none were located.
Correct.
Any other contributing factors to death besides the gunshot wounds?
No.
Is your work peer reviewed?
Yes.
What's that mean?
So we have a process where we, meaning the medical examiners at the state medical examiner's office, have our autopsy reports read by others. If a case is classified as a homicide, then we routinely have one other pathologist read that report. They fill out some paper saying that they agree with our findings. We also have some random review processes where we review natural cases, accidents as well, just to make sure we're all practicing within the standards that we're expected to.
And that occurred here?
Yes.
Were you able to make a determination regarding the cause of death?
Yes.
What was that?
Gunshot wounds of head.
Were you able to make a determination regarding manner of death?
Yes.
And what was that?
Homicide.
Are these your opinions to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
No further questions, Judge.
Mr. Rodbaker?
None, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You may step down. You're excused. And Mr. Ringel, before we get to any more witnesses, I want to take up, I think, one exhibit that the state offered that we kind of reserved. That was State's Exhibit 306, which I understand is a portion of the presentation that Detective Lord gave when she testified last week. And my understanding is that there's no objection to Exhibit 306 at this point. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, then State's Exhibit 306 is now admitted. And with that, Mr. Ringel, does the state have any additional witnesses to call?
No, Your Honor, the state rests at this time.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, what that means, the state is rested. That means the state's not going to be presenting any more evidence in this case as part of their case in chief. And so, third day in a row, we're going to be done a little bit early today. We can move very quickly. What I can tell you is I expect that we will be able to get this case submitted to you by the end of this week. So, whether it goes into next week or not, that's going to be up to you folks, probably depending on what time we get the case submitted to you. But there are some things that we need to do and need to work on, and we will do that today, and then we'll pick back up tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So I ask that you be back here ready to go at 9, and remind you that admonition I gave you previously. Again, hit the high points again. Keep an open mind. We're not done with the case yet. Don't talk to anybody about the case. Don't let anybody talk to you about the case. Don't do any type of investigation or research. Avoid any media accounts, traditional media, and any social media accounts or commentary about the case as well. So with that, I wish all of you a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.